Hello and welcome back to After Whistle Sports. I'm back here again with Tony and Derek to go over some more NBA basketball. Currently, we're recording this on Thursday night, and we're watching the Dallas Mavericks play in Game 5 against the Warriors. Actually, the score right now is 40-32 Warriors, but you guys will probably know the end of this game before we do right now. We've had a really solid few games of basketball mixed in with the blowouts, but what do you guys think so far? Just like overarching ideas, takes about the playoffs up until this point.
I think that specifically this Warriors and Mavericks series, it's closer than a lot of people are making it out to be. Game 2, the Mavericks were up a ton and they sort of choked the lead. There have been like various occurrences where the Mavericks have just been up like a whole lot and they've just not been able to hold on, and so I think that the Mavericks do have a chance not to win the series but to make it interesting as we move forward.
I think a lot of people feel similarly, but it doesn't really feel like the best basketball that we could be playing right now by a lot of the teams left in the series. A lot of blowouts, not a lot of clutch time. I think a lot of the first round games and even some of the second round games, particularly like Celtics Net series, was probably one of the best series I watched this entire thing. It was a first round series and felt like every game was close, but I'm hoping that the finals will be better.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the same page there. It feels like a lot of these games are scripted the same way. You know, we get the home team goes out to a pretty big lead, and then you get like a late comeback. We saw it with the Celtics a couple nights ago. We saw it the Warriors almost pulled it off to end the series also a couple nights ago. But yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you guys think is the reason for all these blowouts in what should be competitive series?
I think the big factor is obviously great defense, and a lot of these teams are less so superstar teams that are like dependent on having good defense, or they're not superstar teams and they are more dependent on having great two-way players and great role players that fit their jobs, compared to like having LeBron carry a bunch of bums to the finals as we've seen in the past. But like that's really all for me. That's the main thing.
I mean, I'm definitely gonna have to agree with that. A lot of great defense being played, but I also think that a lot of these teams are very three-point shooting teams, like the Mavericks, for example. When you have a bad shooting night, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to compete with a team like the Warriors that can just play great offense and I guess shoot you out of the room. And so that's very difficult. But I think on the Heat Celtics side, when you play great defense and when the Celtics are hitting their shots and they have just a more flowing offense, they're going to be blowing out the Heat. And so that's what makes it very difficult.
Yeah. Before we go into some like future game in these series predictions. Mm-hmm. I just want to hear some of your takes on maybe like a certain game or like what's going on recently with this series. I mean, we can start. We're watching the Mavericks Warriors here. I feel like that series is going to be over tonight. I think the Warriors are going to close it out, just like I said in the last podcast. But what have you seen, at least? I know like game 1 and 2 were pretty lopsided, but what did you see from the lone victory that the Warriors or that the Mavericks have had so far in this series?
I mean, I think a lot of it comes down to the Mavericks are starting to attack the basket. They're starting to get into the paint, which makes it a lot more difficult for the Warriors to just sit on the three-point line and make them hit contested shots. When the Mavericks are able to get into the paint, they force the Warriors to actually play them, harder defensively, which makes their offense run better, makes them better able to compete. They're also having just more defensive effort, I feel like, which has made the Warriors' shots more difficult.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think the Warriors are definitely making the Mavericks work a little bit more than the Suns. I think the Warriors' offense is a lot more fluid, which requires the Mavs have a lot more effort in that sense. Another big thing, I think, is that for both the Mavericks... Wait, sorry, can you repeat the...
Yeah. We're just talking about quickly, like, what do you see from the Mavericks? They won the last game.
Right. Sorry. Compared to the Suns series, the Mavericks have been shooting way poor. I think it's much better perimeter defense on minimizing the amount of contested threes available for the Mavericks. The Warriors do a great job in closeouts relative to the Suns, and overall, just it's been a lot more difficult for the Mavs to get the shots that they were getting during the Suns series.
Yeah, the thing that's really stood out to me is some of like the crazy shooting splits we've seen from the Mavs this series. Guys like Maxi Kleber and Reggie Bullock, who were shooting, I mean, before the series, they were like the two of the top like 5 guys in 3-point percentage in the playoffs, and they just haven't been able to get any stops. And I mean, you can attribute that to just like regressing to the mean, but when I'm watching these games, I'm seeing a lot of good things the Warriors are doing defensively. They're just like so hard to like get good matchups just because the way they're guarding Luka is like, I mean, I said this in the last podcast, but I said they're going to probably let Luka try to basically create everything on his own, and like they'll double him and hedge at some points, but a lot of what they're doing is just putting a longer defender like Wiggins on him and just forcing him to hit really tough shots and go off for 40 points in a loss, which has happened I think 2 times already. So, and what that does is it allows the other guys to stick to their mans more often, and Kleber's not a guy who is going to be able to take guys off the dribble or create his own shot. He's literally just going to stand in the corner and hit open threes that Luka creates for him. And so when that's not possible, when Luka can't get to the hoop as easy, Kleber's basically shooting just a lot harder shots. And so, of course, he's not going to shoot a great percentage. Talking about guys like Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith, I feel like those are more just like regressing to the mean, because they're still getting solid looks. They're just not shooting at the rate that they were in like the Suns series.
I mean, I think a lot of it is also psychological. Like, when you start missing that many shots, it's just like, at that point, you're like, you keep on overthinking your shot, and so you're going to keep missing after that. And so I saw a couple of times where Cleveland in particular, you know, like waited or hesitated before shooting the shot, and so his shot was just off immediately, which made it difficult for him to make those shots specifically.
Yeah, I do want to say, I'm pretty sure Dorian Finney-Smith has been shooting like around the same, so... But definitely there's been a decline overall in 3-point percentage, especially in Kleber, Bullock, Bertans in particular, who was supposed to be a big asset that they picked up in the Wizards trade, like huge contract, but it's just not been putting up the same numbers.
Another thing I've noticed is, I don't really have a stat for this right now, but in terms of rebounding, in the first 2 games, I think the Warriors, for a team that like, when you think of the Warriors, you don't think of a team who's going to like attack the glass very often and get second chance points, but they're so potent on offense that you can't give them second opportunities. And the first 2 games, I think in the first one, they're out rebounded by a pretty solid margin. I don't know if you have that with you, Derek.
I do have the stats actually. So the Warriors are out rebounding the Mavericks 183 to 143 in the series.
Yeah, like that's absurd.
And offensive rebounds is 35 to 24. So
it's pretty crazy. And so, I mean, to be honest, when you put that into perspective, the Mavericks aren't playing that poorly on the defensive end. They're just, I mean, giving up a lot of second chance opportunities, and like in the NBA these days, like second chance opportunities are basically 3-pointers, because a lot of these teams get the offensive rebounds and they'll kick it out to their shooters. And so, I mean, I think, I'm not sure what the rebounding numbers for this current game we're watching live are, but Warriors are up by 10, so I assume with that, the rebounding is either even or in the Warriors' favor, which we've seen in the games that they've won. They've had a really solid rebounding margin.
I think another factor relative to like other opponents like the Suns is the Warriors have great slashers. Clay and Wiggins have been doing a great job getting great passes and also like forcing defenders to stick with them as they like cut through the lanes, and either getting great looks or like freeing up space so someone else can get a great look, because their offense is always moving and very dynamic.
Definitely. I think that definitely also just like tires out the defense to a point where they just like don't want to fight for that rebound or anything, which makes it easier for the Warriors to grab the offensive board.
So let's say, and again, this is super hypothetical, but let's say the Mavericks end up coming back and winning this game, pushing the series to 3-2. What do you need to see from the Mavericks moving forward to make it look like they at least have a chance at pushing it to either 7 or, I don't know, like, in my opinion, I think the Warriors are going to win this game, and this question will have 0 impact whatsoever, but, I mean, you can even talk about the game going on right now. Like, what do the Mavericks need to do to come back and ultimately win this game on the road?
Well, I feel like the answer lies in, like, 2 options. The first is either, or I guess there's also an injury thing, but regardless of that, the first is, like, the rise of either Jalen Brunson, Dinwiddie, and other stars stepping up. Luka's been doing a great job and having around a triple-double and 30 points per game per series, but the production by the other players on the team just hasn't been what they need. Or we need a replication of what happened during the Sun series, where a lot of the role players started stepping up and increasing their three-point percentage and actually hitting their shots, even if a particular star doesn't rise up among them.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with that. I don't think that Luka can do it alone against this Warriors team. There's just too many potent offense that the Warriors, or too many potent weapons that the Warriors have on offense, which makes it really difficult. And they're guarding him really well, which makes it difficult for him to score. In Game 4, Dorian Finney-Smith and Jalen Brunson, they both stepped up, had more than 15 points per game, and Reggie Bullock had to make some threes too. So I think it just has to be a team effort for the Mavericks to win the game.
Yeah, I feel like what the Mavericks need to do is they need to win a lot of these second halves. We saw even in the other series too, we'll talk about in a little bit, but it feels like teams start off either really, really good or really, really bad, and then they either finish really, really solid or really, really bad. Like, there's no real consistency, I don't think, in any single game in this series from any of the teams. Yep. And so the Mavericks need to string together 4 really solid quarters. And, with that being said, they could put together 4 really solid quarters and still lose the game. Just because I think that's how good the Warriors are. But I agree with you guys. Luka needs to basically have some of his weight lifted off. And, as we just see, Luka get stuffed on the drive. But, sorry, we're watching this. There's some crazy rotations going on in this game.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah, I think someone might be injured for the Warriors. That Draymond is injured?
I think Draymond might be injured.
Yeah,
That's a huge defensive and offensive impact. So.
Yeah, but Warriors still have the lead here. So I would say consistency is the biggest key on both ends of the floor for the Mavericks. Let's talk a little bit more abstract, maybe beyond the series, because Tony actually texted this to us the other day. And what did you say again? You said, you basically related Luka in this series to Harden on the Rockets. They put up those crazy numbers. I want to hear, what do you guys think? Because I have a pretty strong opinion about this, because I don't know if I said it on the podcast, but I'm a pretty anti-Harden guy in general. But Tony, what prompted you to make that comparison?
I saw a tweet on NBA Twitter that was comparing Luka right now in the Western Conference Finals to prime James Harden 2018 with the Rockets, and I think one of the threads is just kind of highlighting the shortcomings of a one-man centric offense and an offense revolving around a singular player. We saw Harden eventually get the help he needed with Chris Paul on that Rockets team, and I think people are starting to make that similar comparison that Luka just needs another star around him to actually help him and get him over that hump and beating again the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I totally agree. Just on face, that they're very similar players and that they're very heliocentric. They control a lot of usage, and they control a lot of the ball demand. Basically, they're both great scorers. They're great playmakers, or at least Harden was in his prime.
We can look at Harden's playmaking stuff. I think, because most of his playmaking came off of just pick and rolls where Capella would just rim run basically.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't actually moving an offense.
Okay, I will agree that Luka's a much better passer than Harden ever was.
Luka runs an offense.
Mm-hmm.
What Harden and D'Antonio were doing, that was an offense. I don't know what that was. That was
But I think that they're very similar in the way that they could both create instant offense. Luka step back three, Harden step back three. If Harden had the ball, you had to be on him, and he did average a really solid 29 points per game or so in the
Yeah, I just think for me the biggest difference between those two is the intent of the offense and the intent of being a ball dominant guard. I think when I watch Luka, I see a guy more like LeBron in the playoffs, where he can get his own, he can do whatever he wants on the court, but he's also getting guys involved and basically creating shots that wouldn't otherwise be open for his teammates. Whereas when we saw Harden, and I think one of the reasons why those teams had such problems was because he would basically he is the offense. It's not him creating opportunities for people. It's either he's going to the free throw line, or he's pulling up for a three, or he's taking it to the hoop with a pick and roll opportunity there. And the only real opportunity he created for that team was either pick and roll or his own ISO ball, which I don't know. I feel in modern basketball, that's gonna be stopped most of the time, especially with the switches that you can get with big men. And that was even before we've seen guys like Bam and Looney in the even guys like Horford or Williams deep in the playoffs, where you would have guys who maybe weren't as mobile, who you can switch on Harden. Harden would just either draw a foul on a three, or he would basically just get to the free throw line every time. In which case, like, I don't think that's a viable option for Luka to do in this series. So, like, I don't think you have that many bailout opportunities, and so that's why, in my opinion, what Luka's doing is a little bit more impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely makes a ton of sense. I just think that generally, Harden is like one of the most overhated players in NBA history, just because of his play style. Also because of
but when
bias.
has Harden won? Like,
okay, when has Luka won? Like, I don't know. It's like the same thing.
I don't know, man. I don't know, dude.
I mean, that's a hot
Luka's
take.
had much. Okay, Harden's had much better teams. Harden was on the okay. Harden was on really good teams, dude. Like, his supporting cast were like solid.
Yeah. Okay, that's true. I think that Luka will have a much better career than Harden, but I'm saying that they had very similar sort of like play styles, and I feel like the comparison is valid.
I feel that's doing such a disservice. I feel like to Luka. Like, I feel like if you told him you compared him to Harden, he would probably be super pissed.
I mean, Harden also brought the prime Warriors 7 games. Like, basically,
that's true. Without Chris Paul,
like,
the 73-9 Warriors. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I will admit, like, that was pretty magical from Harden's end. Like, he was shooting like an absurd percentage. I think he was putting up like 35 shots a game, and he was like doing crazy stuff. But, anyways, we've talked about this series. It looks like, as it stands in the first half right now, the Warriors, if they hold on to this lead, should be advancing to the finals. Which we'll talk about that maybe in another podcast. How incredible that is for the team who I'm pretty sure finished like third. Like 2 years ago, or like finished third to last 2 years ago.
Yeah.
The Warriors are insane front office work all around the board. But let's talk about the other series real quick. Celtics lead 3-2. They have a chance to close it out tomorrow. Do you guys think the Celtics will win Game 6, or do you think the Heat have just enough firepower to turn it to a Game 7?
Yes, absolutely. I think the Celtics will be winning Game 6. I do not see the Heat having a chance at all. I think that the Heat's offense is just way too stagnant. And the Celtics defense, give them credit. They're very stifling, and it's very difficult for the Heat to score. So I think that Celtics in 6, I'm calling it here right now.
I would also probably agree with Celtics in 6, like, barring, like, massive injuries or other random things like that Horford, like, 5 hour in advance, like...
It's like massive injury.
Illness.
The Celtics have had like everyone like questionable at some point. Like
same with the Heat too. Yeah. But I do think Celtics in 6. Heat are definitely more of I think they're better as a home team, at least relative to the Celtics. And I also think just the Celtics have just had a better offensive scheme lately. The guards in the Heat have just been performing horribly. Like Lowry. As of recent, I'm not sure if he ever hit a shot in that last game.
Oladipo's terrible.
Oladipo was also really cold. Bad. Max Strus in particular said some comments like, I also heard every time the audience went quiet and then didn't hit a shot in the next 17 shots that he took after that quote, after I think it was Game 4. Or it might have been Game 3. But, like, the Heat just haven't been doing what they need to be doing. The loss of Tyler Hero... I'm pretty sure he's still day-to-day. Not sure if he'll come back. If he's not back,
I feel like they have to play him.
I think it's just...
Yeah.
I think I just think their season's over. But great run by the Heat.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, it was a nice run. And, I mean, I think we all predicted the Celtics to win this series. I think 2 of us said 6, 1 of us said 7, maybe. I don't know. But, like, we talked about it in the last podcast, the fact that the Celtics have just more guys that can go on offense. Like, the Heat... And Jimmy Butler has had, like, a solid series, but he hasn't had, like, a series, like, that's, like, solid enough to basically, like, pick up for Oladipo, Lowry, and Hero being out, basically.
I don't know. I don't agree with the... Like, obviously, Jimmy got injured in Game 3.
Yeah.
And after that, he's been playing horribly. Not horribly, but, like, he's been averaging 10 points per game, right? It's not good. And so, injuries obviously affected him, but... the Heat just, like, haven't been playing well as a team. They have, like...
But part of the reason is that they don't have Butler. Like,
yeah,
they work really well because they're going to be good defensively and they're going to get what they can get in the half court. Like, and a lot of that depends on Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler. And if both of them are injured, like, who do you go to? Honestly, like, Gabe Vincent, I mean, he actually had a solid... He's one of the guys who actually played pretty well, but I saw they try to run Duncan Robinson, they try to use Strus, and I mean, at some point the Celtics kind of figure out what they're trying to do, running those guys off screens, and then at that point you're basically done, because while Bam is a solid pick and roll threat, like, he's not going to space the floor like you need to against that Celtics defense.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just looking at the last two games, and Jimmy Butler has shot a combined 7 for 32 in games.
I mean,
4
that's
and
like
5.
detrimental almost. Like
Yeah.
at that point, to even play him, like.
Yeah. I mean, obviously he has like such gravity on offense, so you have to play him. But it's just like difficult to see the Heat go out like this.
Went from a 41 point 29 to 8, 6, and 13.
Yeah.
Not a great look. I also think the other thing that's important is that Jimmy Butler's their primary ball handler in the clutch time. Like the Celtics have Jaylen Brown, who's pretty good in the fourth, and obviously Tatum, and even Horford to some extent has been had his moments. But Jimmy seems to be the Heat's main guy to give it to in the fourth, and if he doesn't step up, I don't see how they could close out a close game.
Yep. I'll talk a little about the Celtics because while like the Heat haven't played as well in this series, the Celtics are. I feel like I don't know what to say about them at this point because they're playing good like, in certain moments, but they've also shown that they could lose to basically anyone. They're so inconsistent, and I know part of that's injuries, but like if you're looking at the Celtics team in this series so far, who do you have stood out as like guys who are just consistently playing at a like conference championship level?
Personally, I've really been liking Derek White. I mean, this might be just because of last game, but he played really, really well last game. He's good as a facilitator and a scorer, and I like how he's been playing. I think that also Al Horford is really just like a centerpiece on the Celtics defense. He locks it down. He also can shoot really well.
One part that's underrated about his game is he's really good as like an outlet guy, like starting the break, and he can take the ball up.
Yeah.
Which I feel like it doesn't mean too much, like for those who like don't watch as much basketball, but like he creates so much on offense
definitely.
where like they shouldn't have open shots there just because he can handle the ball and get up and down the floor. So. Yeah, I agree with you.
I saw him run a fast break actually yesterday.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that was nuts,
yeah.
Like that was insane. That guy's 35 years old and doing that. It's nuts.
Yeah, to add on to your thing, Derek White's been doing a great job navigating screens in particular, relative to a lot of other defenders. Like I know Mikal Bridges struggled with screens against the Mavs, for example, and he was considered the Defensive Player of the Year candidate. A player that also stands out to me, I mentioned him earlier, is Jaylen Brown. He had the 40-point game before. He's been pretty consistent in clutch time in a lot of these series when Tatum hasn't been performing to his best, and has been averaging, I believe, like 25 points per game with like at least 4 assists and rebounds in addition to some steals because he plays pretty good defense and honestly has a decent shot at conference finals MVP if Tatum slacks off. But the Tatum narrative might overwhelm that. So.
Yeah, we can talk about it in a little bit. I just wanted to mention Marcus Smart too because
for sure.
I'm never gonna like not mention him because he's so important to this team. And I believe I saw that he leads all players in assists in the conference finals. I think he's like 6.8 maybe, which is
7.7.
7.7. And for a guy who like isn't a real point guard, like he's basically just like a fake 2 guard who like takes the ball up sometimes. That's pretty incredible, and we know how he plays defensively. So to me, like him, Tatum, Brown, like you can have a situation or a game where one of those guys, or maybe even 2 of those guys, aren't at their best, and you can still win a game. And so to me, that's why the Celtics have the lead, and I think that's why the Celtics should end up winning tomorrow and moving on to the finals.
I think that also Robert Williams is having like an immense defensive impact. He's averaging 10 points, 8 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks in 23 minutes per game.
That's pretty
That
crazy.
is ridiculous. His per 36 numbers must be like absolutely crazy. That is ridiculous. And so, I mean, with him on the floor, the Celtics become like a really, really good rim protecting team. So, huge props to Robert Williams.
Okay, so let's talk. I mean, Tony, you mentioned a little bit when you were talking about Jaylen Brown, but we now have conference finals. What is it? MVPs?
Oh, yeah.
What are they? It's like
It's the Larry Bird for the East and the Magic Johnson
Larry Bird
for
and
the
the
West.
Magic Johnson. So, I honestly think these are really stupid. To me, they make no sense. But I guess if we were to pick who we believe should win it from each side, like let's say the Warriors win tonight, and let's say the Celtics win tomorrow, who do you guys have winning the Magic Johnson conference? That's gonna be so hard. The Magic Johnson conference
the West,
final.
I think.
Yeah, the West, and the Larry Bird conference finals MVP in the East.
So I think the Magic Johnson one is pretty straightforward. I think
Give
it
it to
should be Curry.
Wiggins.
I think
Give it to Wiggins. Come on.
I mean, Wiggins has been playing really well, but it's got to go to Curry. He's just been on a tear, absolutely. Shooting lights out, 47% from 3 in the series. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, it has to go to Curry, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Curry.
I mean, it's gonna be Curry, but like I want Wiggins to win it because you know what, like Wiggins he's been so good defensively. Like he almost single-handedly won the game. Like
it's like the Iguodala Finals MVP.
like okay, but like Iguodala had a much better case to win that.
Okay,
I think because
yeah,
Iguodala's putting up crazy points per game numbers the way he like normally doesn't. But I don't know, dude. Like Wiggins he's like the missing piece on that team. You know?
Yeah.
Like we thought. Even if we go back early in this, like in the regular season, we're like, okay, like they have Curry, they have Thompson coming back, they have Poole, but like who's gonna be the one who like makes them a finals team?
Yep.
You know, because they were good, but you have like an aging Steph, you have like an injured Clay, like who's gonna take him to the next level? And I think it's been Wiggins so far.
I mean, Wiggins and Poole, I think both of them.
Wiggins
have
and
been
Poole is
integral.
Incredible.
Yep.
I mean, we might be able to talk about it in next podcast if we do like an off-season thing, but I was saying Wiggins might deserve a max contract, which might be a hot take. Anyways, in the East, I'll say I think Tatum wins it because of Jason Tatum, but I would be fine with honestly either Brown or Smart getting it too. Again, like I feel like these awards always neglect defensive efforts, and so like in that case, if you look at the assist numbers, look at the overall impact of the game, I think Marcus Smart is the most valuable player for the Celtics, but. Yeah, I'm fine with Tatum or Brown.
Yeah, I think that it's probably going to go to Tatum for the narrative. I mean, he's been playing, fantastic, but I also think there's a really solid case for Jaylen Brown. I mean, he's just like he's shooting better. He's making like I don't know, just like great plays on offense, but also he's having like turnover struggles, and so I think Jason Tatum with his combined playmaking, he does have an impact on defense, and also his just like general offensive facilitating. I think that Tatum's going to take it home.
Yeah, though I'm a big fan of Jaylen Brown, I think it's going to go to Tatum both for the narrative, and I think he's just had like slightly more of an impact, like higher assist stats, higher rebound stats to make up for his slightly worse field goal percentage, and I think he's sort of recognizing at points that he's just like a little bit off in some of these games, and is doing a good job at like kind of stepping down a little bit and not making up for the making less shots by shooting more, which some players tend to do.
Okay, I think we're close to wrapping up here. I just want to hear just real quick prediction for the game tomorrow. Heat Celtics. What do we think?
I think Celtics take it. I think it's a blowout too. Yeah.
Wow, what a surprise.
Yeah, I think the Celtics will take it. I think too many injuries for the Heat. They definitely have the core necessary. Maybe have the potential to make a run if they trade a little bit of their depth for another scoring star. But
yeah. I agree. The Heat are running out of gas at this point. There were questions before the series even started about how their offense can match up with the Celtics, and I believe like the first few games have basically proven our point that the Celtics they have too many guys, and the Heat don't. So I think that's a great ending point. Again, thanks for listening. We'll probably have another podcast out before the finals start where we go over our predictions, and kind of like maybe what happened. If maybe we have some craziness in one of these series where the Heat end up coming back or the Mavs end up coming back, but I don't really think so. So we're also thinking about maybe doing some NBA draft stuff, maybe like in between or after the finals podcasts. Like, let us know if you guys want to see that. We have a Twitter account, After Whistle Sports, that we've been a little bit more active on. You can also leave a comment on the Spotify podcast or Apple Podcasts like review section. Just let us know if you want to hear the NBA draft stuff. And so, again, I can't wait for the finals. I feel like I'm kind of sick of these conference finals already,
Yeah,
which is
all the
probably bad.
blowouts,
But thanks for listening, and we'll probably see you all next week.